Managing Director of the Resource Management Institute. It's a pleasure to have all of you join us here this morning. And I'm just looking at the list of names. I recognize quite a few of them, and we have people from literally all four corners of the globe participating with us today. So for some of you, good evening, and appreciate you joining us for our this quarter's Power Up session on Agile implications for resource management. I wanted to just take a couple minutes and quickly highlight again what the Institute's all about. Is, we are dedicated to the advancement of resource and workforce management, thought leadership, best practices, and the creation of global standards. And we also have certainly globally recognized credentialing capabilities now for people in the resource management space through our RMCP program. We'll highlight that a little bit toward the end of the broadcast today. Probably the most important thing I think we do is we've provided a community vehicle so that people in the discipline of resource management can collaborate and communicate with each other. Project management has had, I'll say, the luxury of being able to do that for the last 20 years through a variety of different forums and capabilities, and those are, I think, always good things. We hope the RMI will play an important role for the resource management community as well. If you're not familiar with the resource management community, Resource Management Institute, and or haven't seen the latest changes to our website, I'd ask you to go to resourcemanagementinstitute.com, where you'll find a plethora of information about resource management and opportunities to collaborate through various community opportunities. We've got a terrific forum that you can participate in, and certainly events like today. Opportunities to help you with innovation in resource management in your environments through the various tools we provide in our toolbox to RMCPs, as well as through the opportunity to look at our insights page, which provides white papers and other things on resource management discipline. And that certainly last is the ability to get educated, and that includes our RMCP, Resource Management Certified Professional Program, again, which we'll recap at toward the end of the broadcast as well. So please come check us out. By the way, best of all, joining the RMI is free. And all you got to do is go up here, hit the join button, put in a little bit of information, and you're on your way. So with that, again, thank you for joining us today. I'm pleased to introduce our managing partner for RTM Consulting, on our consulting side of our business, and also one of the board members of the advisory board for the Resource Management Institute. Mark's been in the industry for quite some time and is well steeped as an expert in resource management, and is going to bring a lot of context today, hopefully some hot tips on Agile and its implications for resource management. So with that, Mark, you're up.
Hi, thanks, Randy. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. So we're going to talk about Agile as it relates to resource management. And I'll say this, I don't think it's the last time we're going to talk about this. Let's just say it's the first time, because really what we're seeing, of course, is the intersection of the two, Agile becoming more and more a accepted and adopted way to deliver, and of course how we address that from resource management practices. So it was worthy of trying to give it some thought on how to reconcile the two. So I thought I'd first say that Agile is being used in a few different contexts, and depending on the context you're coming from, it certainly was born in the software development world, which largely maybe in IT shops and product development shops. But it's certainly bleeding over and showing up more and more in our professional consulting services delivery as well. And so depending on that context, it can have some variance as to how we treat it with resource management. I won't go into all those details, but I thought today we just kind of lay out a few key thoughts and ideas around it in general, and hopefully educate you a little more, get you thinking about it, and again, get us as a peer group thinking about it more and more. So I thought I'd start by saying a level setting on what is Agile. I don't want to take that for granted, but really what Agile is a set of values and principles through which solutions evolve through a more collaborative, highly team, self-organized way. So Agile itself is an umbrella term. So most people think, Agile is with a capital A. Well, honestly, it's a little awkward whether you capitalize it or not capitalize it, because really it is a is a set of principles that were developed, created by actually a bunch of software developers. So you might think of it as like an open source movement where developers decided we wanted to come up with a better way to deliver software, deliver projects, and so they came up with these principles. Now, there are many Agile methods that are becoming ingrained or have evolved over the years. So we hear the most popular one is Scrum, and Scrum Master, and some of the things that go with that. You hear about Kanban, which is a kind of an outshoot of Lean Six Sigma, XP, Extreme Programming, all these. So all these people would say adhere to the Agile principles and have different levels of acceptance or evolution. So again, just want to let you know, when you hear Agile, you're not necessarily hearing one specific thing that you can go read the book on, but you might have to ask a little more about in terms of what methods of Agile are in play. But for us as resource managers, we don't necessarily have to get that down to that level of detail.
Okay. So to look at Hey, Mark, one thing I forgot to mention the front is we are going to do a Q&A at the end of this. And by the way, if you want to ask questions as we're going, you can put questions in the question panel on GoToWebinar there. So sorry, I didn't mention that at the front end, Mark. I'm sorry to interrupt you here. I'll take you to your next slide.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so as you see from the picture here, and this is what I think many of us, when we think of Agile, we get this concept that it's iterative. That we are condensing work units into tighter cycles, but as opposed to classic waterfall, which is do everything in stages and get to. But the key point is the end state. No one will say necessarily that Agile's faster or slower, that it's more expensive, less expensive, or cost effective. The point is that what people will say with Agile is it's making clients happier because business value is being generated sooner and delivered to the client sooner, and that at the end more business value is delivered more quickly than otherwise, right? So we have to almost suspend the idea that success of a project being on time and on budget is not as important in an Agile world as did we deliver a solution that that met the business needs and the business is happy with and providing value. And so again, just a little bit of a conceptual or philosophical difference there as well, other than the actual mechanics that go into Agile. But the key is high customer involvement, transparency, and quite simply, they're getting working solutions sooner, or at least get to touch and interact with those working solutions sooner. So you can imagine the benefits of a more engaged client, a more happy end user that gets to see the progress of the project team throughout the process. So that's all well and good, right? But what does that mean to, makes it different as we start to look at it from a lens of resource management? Well, first is a product versus project. Because Agile and these development methods are going to start with software development, it's the idea that we're not just necessarily doing it as an established team that only works on the product. There's no project orientation to the work, right? So it was born out of product, but oftentimes we're trying to view it as projects, the work that we're doing, and so that have a start and have an end. And so oftentimes it is part of a project, and so it's making sure that we know the difference, though, that in reality, when people think Agile, they think, the product's the thing, the end solution is the thing, and the project needs to be flexible to that happening. And so when you and I think of a project, we think, again, a very firm start and a very firm finish. And if you don't finish in that time frame, well, then change happens, and we manage to that change. That's a little bit looser boundaries for an Agile-minded team. So projects are structured as a series of smaller iterations and sprints. This could be not only in I'll call it the construction or build cycle, but it also could be the way in which requirements and discovery is happening as well. And so you've got these tighter time frames. Usually a sprint is 2 to 4 weeks, and a lot is happening, and then a lot of moving parts going on. So just the structure of it is a little bit different. Resource allocations can be different. Again, that's course, what we're going to talk about a little bit more, shorter and more dynamic planning cycle. So as resource managers, we are reliant on project managers to be able to update us or articulate the planning cycle of a project so we know when resources may or may not be coming available. We have defined allocations and assignments, but that end date or when is done kind of question is a little looser, and so it can cause some challenges when a project manager doing Agile project is interacting with a resource manager, because again, you might hear a word like it depends or something like that. And then also the potential for black box work environment. So from a resource management point of view, this is not necessarily a bad thing, but it could be a problematic thing if we can't see into that black box and we're not getting the most efficient use of resources inside of that black box. So, if I was to kind of summarize it, Agile methods really employ a little bit less rigorous planning. I know that kind of seems like that's not a good thing, but for Agile, I would say I'll call it more dynamic planning, if we want to use that euphemism. And so it provides resource managers a little less insight and a little less predictability around how staff is used, and more importantly, too, productivity. Right. So what we really care about is, we want to keep track of everybody. That's kind of level one. But really, what we're trying to do as good good RMO is making sure the team is being utilized or being productive in the best way for the organization. And that's really a key thing to think about. It's not just knowing where all the chess pieces are, knowing where all the staff is, but are we using, again, the most productive use out of our teams? So with this, it's a good time to just interject. What are the fundamentals we're trying to apply here? And it's our just-in-time resourcing methodology that we've had in place. We look at our wheel and the components of the wheel. What Agile really, kind of makes much more difficult, I'll say, is the staffing piece. In determining who's where and when. But I would say then sometimes we have to. What I'm going to talk to you about, or we're going to discuss, is we have to be a little more flexible to how we do this. The problem that we have to make sure we don't let Agile undermine is our ability to forecast. And I think that's really the line we have to draw in the sand to say, it's our job as resource management to know what all future needs are. And if we're not able to really understand how our resources are allocated for different work, then we're not going to be able to do that, which means all the things that come with that. We're going to continue in a less productive or reactive mode until we can truly understand how to look out in the future and figure out how to use resources. We don't want black boxes. We don't want lack of transparency because we're being kept at arm's length while an Agile project's going on. And so this is kind of going to be the point of emphasis for me, is how to look at some of these fundamentals. So I boil down RM fundamentals even more simply, and that is know your supply, know your demand. When we do RMCP training and certification, this is the area I like to highlight in that curriculum. And that you really boil down, resource management is kind of simple that way. We are trying to align demand with supply and supply with demand, and trying to keep those somewhat in alignment and in sync, and relatively the same amount. And but of course, so much complexity goes in doing that. But we have to come back to that most basic thought process here when it comes to Agile in these projects. And I will boil it down to, and this is what I've learned through looking and inspecting at these kinds of projects and listen to people talk about it, and is don't let the supply dictate the demand. I think the biggest risk that we have with these kinds of projects, where the delivery teams or the project managers are saying, hey, I got these people locked up, I'm going to use them in 15 different ways, and I'll let you know when you can use them, and I'll be done when I'm done, that kind of thing. I know that's kind of an extreme scenario, but what's really happening is that supply dictates demand. I'm going to lock up a team, and then I'm going to get done what I can get done. And the reality is that good resource management, in my view, happens when demand dictates supply, not supply dictates demand. So again, I can't emphasize enough that sometimes we lose control of that. It pivots, and all of a sudden it becomes the supply is dictating how much demand gets done or not done. And if that happens, then I think you get kind of rounded the corner to a place where you really can't control your future view and your planning or much of anything. So just keep that principle in mind. So if I drill a little bit more into know your supply, this is really about getting back to basics too, is normalize the supply, right? If you haven't done that, do it. If the delivery teams are trying to reinvent the wheel and coming up with non-standard naming, they'll say, oh, well, he's the Scrum Master. I was like, what's a Scrum Master, right? Well, it's a project manager, or is it a lead? We got to make sure, again, they don't, that those teams don't redefine the vocabulary about our supply. So again, continue to focus on agreed set of roles, role names, and make sure they're normalized. Again, a well-maintained skills database and RM alignment mapping. So make sure, again, that you still maintain your right coverage ratios to in terms of how you're managing and monitoring that supply. So the key here is we have to maintain high resource transparency. Now, if we look at the other side of the coin, is know your demand. Okay, so in this case, as I said before, the solution or product is the thing. The delivery teams are going to be very focused, if they're very dipped in the Agile world, is the solution is what matters. And so getting to the point of fulfilling the client's wishes on the solution matter beyond timeframes, even budget for that matter. So again, in true Agile, you're constantly reshuffling the priorities based on what the client wants and what they're seeing with the iterative solution. And so you're making planning adjustments pretty dynamically. And so they're more reacting to the solution. The other thing to keep in mind too is that if we are defining things in project terms, a project as we know it may serve many masters. I've seen this in the PS realm more, where we are 100% project focused, right? We have a customer, we have an opportunity, we have a project. Well, and if there's some Agile elements to it, it can sometimes break that model a little bit. And so what I've seen is some offshore models where the offshore team that's supporting the regional delivery team for a customer, maybe supporting multiple masters or multiple business owners from different departments. So we have to be at least open to how demand is defined and how we characterize that demand, because again, our old constructs of one project equals one customer doesn't always hold. Forecasting is a little more difficult, but we have to remember that the term directionally correct, and I use that an awful lot when I talk about forecasting or resource management in general, is that we have to work to get demand defined. Directionally correct is okay. It's okay even if it's not Agile. We're not trying to get it down to the penny. We're not billing based on this work. We're trying to do capacity planning, resource forecasting, and generally know that we've got the team in a productive spot. So what we have to just remember is that these are still projects. And if they are projects, of course, we need to continue to determine what our demand, determine what our allocation is in this case. If for some reason you're resource managing something that's not a project, well, then you're in a more stable environment and you're probably just doing capacity planning and long range. So I think the real challenges here is when, again, we're in a project-based world versus more stable world. And then kind of related to demand and supply is the assignment itself. If you really look, and I put this in the white paper, if you look at a work plan for an Agile project, it's actually not that intimidating, even from a resource point of view. It's logical. It's got chunks, as I said. Sprints go anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, so they're good chunks of work. So you want to be open to defining demand a little differently. So assignments and how you define those assignments, you've got to really work with the delivery teams and delivery managers to say, how best do we assign people into this kind of environment? Ideally, you want to assign somebody full-time, for the whole sprint. And then the idea is, will you know or not that they'll be involved in the next sprint and the next sprint and the next sprint or not? So in a way, of course, ideally, if a delivery manager wants to keep somebody in for 5 sprints in a row, you have your answer. It's 5 sprints times 3 weeks and you've got that person locked up. Where it gets to be a problem is, that delivery manager says, well, go ahead and send them my way, and I might have them work on sprint 1 for this customer, but then I might have them kind of jump over here and work on sprint 3 for that customer, and then I might have them dabble in sprint 5 with this customer. That's a bit of a problem for us, and that's where we have to work with our delivery managers to say, you can see quickly right there, right? We're letting supply dictate demand, and so as opposed to demand really helping define where supply is, and in that case, we lose a little bit of transparency. We lose a little bit of control of saying, well, what really is this person's allocation? And so either we take it up a notch in terms of the allocation, and that person is allocated to that team for X period of time. But again, what we have lost track of, though, is that if the demand is driving the use of supply, we now don't know when how that demand is being fulfilled and in what time frame. It's kind of in a big bucket. And then, of course, the stability will support better capacity planning for role per skill. So, one of the things that, as I pivot to the conclusion here, is the higher level of involvement to some degree from RM here is what I say in the white paper. I don't think I explicitly say it here. A little more better understanding of the delivery method and how people are going to be used, and then also trying to influence the project and delivery managers to come up with the best use and allocation of resources that meet both needs. I think that's something we sometimes do in other circumstances, but what I always encourage RMs to do is don't just sit back and take it. Don't just say, oh, it's Agile and they know what they're doing and I don't, so I just have to go with whatever they're up to. No, you get in there and hopefully I've given you a little bit of ammunition to say is, look, I understand that delivery method, I get it, but we can work this out to where I can still have transparency of how these people are being aligned against the demand. I've got the information from you to forecast out in the future how they're going to be used or when they're not going to be used anymore. The fact is, Agile delivery is here to stay. My assessment, certainly on the IT and product side, is it's certainly much more penetrated quite a bit. It's getting to be pretty mainstream. In the client-facing and delivery front, it's starting to creep in more and more. It's, I'll say, hybridized. You'll start to see hybrid versions of that, maybe in the build cycle. But I see it continuing to increase, especially if you support projects that are fairly large and complex. Clients will be demanding this. It is doable, but it does take some partnership with delivery side to really, again, drill into some of the points that I mentioned. And again, what we don't want to do is let delivery dictate the fundamentals of resource management. There has to be a balance there. We don't want to let the people owning the supply to kind of redefine how resources are being allocated and used against demand. We have to keep that balance of being able to keep track of our demand and how supply aligns with that demand. So I know I gave you a bit of a head full and a mouthful there, but hopefully that gets your brain moving a little bit on this topic. I can't say that we have all the answers to every situation here, but hopefully giving you a little bit to think about in your situation. So with that, Randy, I'll turn it back over to you to finish us off.
Perfect, Mark. Thanks for that. And we're going to be watching the Q&A panel here in just a moment. We'll take some questions from the participants here. I wanted to give a quick update on the RMCP program itself. For those of you not familiar with it, it's the first of its kind certification program for people in the RM discipline, where you can learn best practices. You get access to a special resource center, and you have an opportunity to collaborate through the website in a variety of ways. We've got well over 100 companies today now that have put people through the program, and a lot of individuals, by the way, as people started to realize in industry, the certification on an individual basis is also quite valuable. The RMCP program itself, if you're interested in going through the course, is a 3-day classroom course, or you can take it online. 6 weeks, 2 hours, once each week, and it includes interactive lectures, case study workshops, and then it certainly concludes with a recertification exam. And there is a 2-year recertification process for RMCPs. The course cost is still $1,595 per person. And for those of you who are PMP certified, you can earn PDUs towards your PMI recertifications as well. 16 and a quarter for the in-class version, or 13 and a quarter for the online version. And in the course, we teach you the methodology that Mark talked about briefly as we went through here. And then last, I'll just mention, again, you can find on our website where our upcoming course goes. The in-class one in early October has sold out. We are taking a list of names. If the list gets large enough, we may choose to open that back up and move to a different venue. But at the moment, we've sold out. But the next in-class one's coming up in January 23rd, and early bird pricing that saves you $100 is still available through December 23rd. We've got an online course starting November 14th as well. So just a little bit of information. So if you're interested in the RMCP program, and by the way, if you have questions or want to learn more, the site, there's an RMCP handbook you can download, and you can certainly send us a note to RMCP at resourcemanagementinstitute.com, and somebody will take the time to answer your questions. So with that, we'll take some Q&A, and Mark, I'll just roll right into the first question that I've been monitoring here. It was, so in our business, we have both waterfall and agile environments, and so do you recommend separating the planning for waterfall versus agile projects, or would you do them together?
Yeah, I would not advocate separating them. I'd keep them together. I think again, a lot of times too, you'll find hybrid versions of, people say it's agile, but it's really just that, certain parts of the project are delivered as agile. So I would keep it together as much as possible. What I would do, of course, as I said, work with the project delivery managers to really understand how resources are allocated in those, and you might again change the way you define assignments, but I wouldn't bifurcate the teams, or I wouldn't track separately. I think it's still one pool of supply, and all have the same kind of general inbound demand coming.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mark. Another question, we get kind of a similar question to most of these is, so when you're trying to implement Agile in an RM environment, what are the biggest struggles? You also have a consulting business. What are the biggest struggles you see or learn when people are going through the class about how to implement Agile RM? What do people struggle with the most?
I think the struggle is that the delivery teams are very passionate about wanting to do it their way, and they tend to really overlook or discount the value of resource management, quite honestly, because it's, again, the product, the thing, the solution, and I need to structure this in a way where we can be most effective and efficient, and I don't need anybody kind of interference or other standards put on me. And I think that's where they're for the organization's sake, they're kind of knocking their nose off to spite their face, because they may be effective in that one project, but they're not allowing the organization to be as effective. And that's where we as RMO have to point out that while you can bottle up these resources and not really give us clarity of when they're going to be free or not, or how you're going to use them, the rest of the organization is dependent on resources as well. And you need, you're part of that. And so that's, I think, is the biggest struggle is delivery managers really bought in and want to kind of control all the resources and to the detriment of the transparency for the rest of the organization.
Okay. All right. Terrific. We are at the top of the hour. Thomas, can you just take a moment and tell people where they can get review this Power Up session online, and what about the new white paper?
Yeah, we're recording the session. We'll send it out to you as soon as we upload it. You can pass that on. Please feel free to pass that on to anyone who was not able to attend today's session. And yeah, we have a white paper on this subject. It will be published next week. So I would be on the lookout for that coming to your mailbox as well, your email mailbox as well.
And that white paper, Thomas, I believe will be available through the website for anybody who's joined the RMI. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, wonderful. Well, so this is Randy Mislovic again. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Mark, thank you for taking the time to share your insights on Agile in resource management. And thank you for attending, everyone. And with that, we'll end the broadcast.